Welcome to the 2024 Sedona Ascension Retreat, Accelerating Consciousness. Presenting clairvoyant, medium, and author, Sue Frederick. Sue Frederick is a channel, clairvoyant, claircognizant, and clairaudient who receives wisdom from guides and departed loved ones to help clients heal grief and find purpose. With her powerful intuition, Sue uses sacred numerology and mystical information to facilitate access into the soul's view. Sue has been a guest on hundreds of radio shows and TV interviews, featured in major magazines and newspapers, and is the author of more than 11 books, including I See Your Dream Job, Through a Divine Lens. It's funny, when I was doing her bio page on my website, I wonder what book she's written besides Through a Divine Lens, and I was just scrolling and in awe. I'm in awe of you, Sue. Intuitive coach, ordained unity minister, soul regression therapist, master numerologist, and sacred channel, Sue Frederick brings an enlightened new perspective that is intuitively guided and soul-inspired. Please welcome Sue Frederick.
Hello, everybody. Well, welcome to 2024, the year of the number 8. As some of you know, I'm a master numerologist, so I'm always looking at the numerological meaning of our own journeys and of the universe. So this year is a year of owning our power. How is that working for you? In your life, are you being called to step up to your great work and your true spiritual wisdom? Are you being asked to quit hiding? Yeah. Because the 8 of 2024 calls all of us to remember that we are mystics. We're not human beings with no connection to the divine or to God consciousness. We are at our core light beings, mystics, always in connection with God consciousness. So how do we know when we're feeling that connection? First of all, it's always there. But I thought it would be fun to go back. This microphone, I have to hold it in the right place, don't I? I thought it would be fun to go look at some Christian mystics and what they taught and what they said about being connected to God and what happened to them for saying that. Because that shows us how our culture, our low evolutionary vibration as we've evolved, has kept us from believing that we each have a conduit, that we are each part of God consciousness. So you might know or not know about Christian mystic Jean Gagnon from France from the late 1600s. She was sent to a convent by her family, which happened back then. When you were 18, you were sent off to the convent to be educated and perhaps become a nun. But she went to the convent and she started telling everybody, well, I can talk to God directly. I don't need the priest. I don't need the Bible. I hear God talking to me. Guess what they did to her? Locked up in the Bastille for 10 years until she got out by saying, oh, I made a mistake. We can't really connect to God without the priest or the Pope. So I use that as an example, first of all, because I loved her life story. I wrote a whole paper on it when I was in Unity Ministerial School. I could relate to her so much. She gets sent off to the convent to be a good, obedient nun. And she goes, but wait, we're all part of God. So they lock her up. Fortunately, now things have changed. We can say we are all part of God And you might get kicked out of your fundamentalist Christian church, but you're welcomed at Unity Church or the Buddhist path or the Hindu path. You can pick your path or avoid all paths except your own connection. So 2024 asks each of you to say, this is what my soul brought me here to be and do. And how do I step up to it fearlessly, with no fear of what other people think of me, or no fear of judgment and rejection? That sounds easy, right? I work with clients every day, and I had them in these workshops yesterday and Friday, where I will say, here's your path, here's what you're meant to do, and what are you doing for a living? And they'll say, well, I have a 9-to-5 job, but that's how I've got to make my living. But on the evenings and weekends, I'm all about becoming a sound healer or a soul regression therapist. And I'll go, excuse me, it's time that you have the courage to say, my purpose is meant to be how I make my living. This is important, people, because this is now an economic-based society, which is pretty pitiful, according to Star Trek and many shows that you watch about the future, where they go, oh yeah, remember when we were an economic-based society? Well, that's changing, fortunately, soon. But in the meantime, you have to acknowledge that money is energy. So how you bring in the money has to be connected to the energy you are giving to the world. If you are going to a job and hating it all day and coming home and meditating for hours, oh my goodness, I don't even need to tell you. That is not being the mystic you came here to be. So I want to tell you my first great awakening, because I think many of you can relate to it. It was 1980, and I was in my 20s, and I was a mountain climber in Colorado. I was an outward bound instructor. Had this beautiful husband named Paul Frederick. He was a mountain climber too. We thought we were so invincible physically. And it was all about teaching people to overcome their fears, their limited thinking, all of that. And then suddenly, he was diagnosed with colon cancer at a very young age. So to me, I thought, oh, well, we'll overcome this. It's just another challenge. This was 1979, 78, but even then we were talking about, oh, we're going to find alternative healers, we're going to do Native American spirituality, we're going to do conventional healing, we're going to do the whole gamut, and we're going to meditate, and we're going to overcome this. The lesson was surrender. So a year after diagnosis, after a lot of suffering, Paul died in my arms. And I only tell you this because he gave me the greatest gift. On the day he was dying, he had gone into a coma, and he was in a hospital. 2 things he had told me he never wanted to happen. He had made me promise him that I would get him home, he would die at home, he would die in my arms. But on the day that he died, medical emergencies happen, we end up in a hospital, he ends up in a coma, and I'm feeling like a failure. I'm feeling like I let him down in the thing I promised him that I would do for him. So I finally, out of exhaustion, after fighting doctors and everybody and saying, let me take him home, and they're going, no, this is bigger than you. So I finally fell asleep on the floor of the hospital, and instantly, guess who appeared in front of me, so alive, so happy, so healthy? He goes, what are you doing on the floor? This is Paul. And he is vividly in front of me. And he goes, get up. I'm not trapped in that body. Why are you so upset? Come over here, hold me like you said you would, so I can leave. Seriously. So I woke up from this nap on the floor going, everybody get out of the room. It's Paul's time to go. And they were all looking at me like, boy, she hasn't had enough sleep lately, you know. And so I went and got on one side of him. His mother got on the other side of him, and he'd been in a coma for a couple days, and his breathing had not changed. And the doctors had all said, oh, this can go on for weeks. And I was, no, please don't tell me that. Now I know the soul is never stuck in the body. Never. And Paul made that so vividly clear. So when I went to hold him and his mother went to hold him, we said, we love you so much. You are free to go out to those beautiful mountains that you love. And we both simultaneously saw, felt, and sensed his soul lift up with one beautiful, peaceful breath, like all he was waiting for was us to say that. And with one breath, he moved out the window, and his mother and I, without even talking, moved over to the window, having sensed and seen that that's where his soul went. And we stood by the window, laughing, giggling, crying with happiness, because he had lifted us up with him to show us that there is no death, that the soul is eternal and eternally happy and eternally healthy and eternally free. That is what a mystic knows. And now you all know that. So that was 1980, long time ago. Actually, were any of you born in 1980? Oh, good. One person. Good. So then I must have been a very stubborn soul when I made my life plan, because I made a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And the plan A was, well, if Paul doesn't wake you up, Sue, the next year, your best childhood girlfriend, Chrissy, will die of leukemia. And so I must have been very stubborn, because I was just getting back on my feet, and my best girlfriend, Chrissy, came out to be with me. And we went skiing, beautiful Colorado skiing, laughing like we always did. We'd met in first grade, and Chrissy was the smartest human being I've ever met. Well, maybe Mark Anthony is smarter. There's a few people who might be smarter. But Chrissy was one of the first women accepted to Georgetown University in 1969. Isn't it amazing women were not accepted to Georgetown University until 1969? Yeah. But she got in. And I think it was only like 10 girls who got in that year. And Chrissy got in. So she had always made me laugh with her brilliance. From the time we were in first grade, we'd be playing on the swing set and she'd go, why do you think nuns go to nunneries? And do cans go to canneries? Should nuns go to canneries? And she would just be crazy brilliant with her words and her ideas. And I would laugh so hard when I was with Chrissy that my stomach muscles would hurt so bad. That was the way she made me laugh. So she comes to visit me for skiing. We're laughing that way. She's making me feel like I'll be okay from Paul's crossing. And she was always there helping me process life. So we ski, she falls down, she hurts her leg, but that happens. But by the time we got her to the airport, she was covered in bruises. And we were like, wow, you must have really broken something. By the time her plane landed in California where she lived, she was rushed to the ER and diagnosed with a very aggressive leukemia. So she calls me to tell me this. And I have to say that if there was ever a time in this life where I was just gonna give up, that was it. Because my question was, why do good, people suffer. Does this ever bother you? Yeah. Is this one of the most essential human questions here? Yeah. So the answer I have come to with the help of Paul, Chrissy, my dad, and many other guides is that our souls decide what we need to grow, which means open our hearts, acknowledge our mystical selves. And sometimes a very advanced soul will decide that, yes, I will burn up some negativity through physical suffering and finally be free of anything that holds me back from knowing I am part of God. So how brave are these souls? Look at Anita Moorjani and her story. All the suffering she went through and the crossing over to wake up. And now she's so clear that she's part of God. Are you clear that you're part of God? Yes. So Chrissy died a year after Paul died. So here's her gift to me. I had, as one does when one is grief-stricken, sold all my belongings and moved to Mexico. I've never had a normal life, but this was one move that my family almost never forgave me for. I was a journalist, I'd been to journalism school, I was well educated, I was actually a really good writer from the time I was a kid. But when Chrissy died, I just went, I don't want to be here anymore. And so my idea of not being here was to go live on a beach in Mexico. But guess what, people? Wherever you go, there you are. So I end up in Mexico teaching fitness in the 80s, Los Aeróbicos de Mazatlan, headband, little funny shirt off your sleeve, your shoulder. I know you know what I'm talking about. But I was using exercise and another language to make me stop asking why I was here. I was tired of the questions, tired of the pain, tired of the grief. So one night I'm sleeping in my apartment in Mexico, and I talked to Chrissy. I mean, it was hard to communicate because there were no cell phones. And to make a call to the States, you had to go to an operator, put in a call. They would say, okay, well, we'll let you know when it's gone through. I'm serious, it could take a whole day to get a call through. So I had talked to her, and she was in remission. She was doing good. So I went to sleep one night in my apartment, and all night long, Chrissy was with me, making me laugh that way that my stomach muscles hurt. She was flying me around. She was showing me friends that we'd grown up with and making me laugh about them. She would say things like, do you remember that time that so-and-so was mean to us and we were laughing and just giggling? And then, remember that time our mom took us to see that play, or actually her mom took us to see Hair at the Aquarius Theater in 1969. This is Chrissy. This is the gift of Chrissy to me. So I had seen Hair original cast, Aquarius Theater, with Chrissy and her mom. In her vision with me, she took me back to that theater. She showed it to me, and she just explained to me all night long what our agreement was and why I had to stay. But she did it with laughter and joy. So I wake up in the morning going, wow, I was with Chrissy all night. My stomach hurts from laughing. Chrissy, and I could feel her presence so strong. So I finally get the call through to the States to her mother, and her mother says, yes, I'm so sorry to tell you. She went into a coma last night and crossed, but she didn't die. Her soul was just like Paul's, free, and teaching me that laughter is the energy of God, and that suffering is not real. Because the minute the soul takes a breath that lifts it out of the body, that suffering is gone, and only us humans who hold on to those memories stay in a belief that suffering is real. So, third one, because I had a plan C. So my third plan C was my father. So when I was growing up, my family was very conservative Southern Catholic. I mean, we're talking in the 50s. We're talking about being educated by nuns at Convent of Mercy. I was being groomed to be a nun. Sorry. When the Beatles came out and I saw them on Ed Sullivan in 7th grade, I knew nun was not in the cards for me. Thank you, Paul McCartney. So when I had been growing up, I had a hard time surviving in the South. And the only reason I did was because of Chrissy and my father. And Chrissy and I, of course, were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get out of here as soon as we graduate from high school. We're gonna go to the best colleges far north, as we can get. And Chrissy succeeded, she got into Georgetown. The furthest north I could be accepted was University of Missouri, which she called University of Misery. But I went there, and I got out away from the South and got out of my Southern family. But my father had always loved his very strange daughter. The daughter who came to the breakfast table and told about a dream of having a car accident and described it down to the detail, who was driving, what road we were on, what truck we hit, what color it was. And my dad would go, but Sue, we don't dream in color, because that's what people thought in the 60s. And he was just going like, why do you have these weird dreams? And of course, that day at the end of school, I'd forgotten about the dream. The exact person I said was driving the exact car on Old Shell Road. We hit the exact truck, and I'm in the back seat going, don't hit it, it's my dream. That stuff doesn't make you popular in high school. But we didn't hit it because we bumped up right against it, but we didn't crash. So when I go home that night and I'm telling my dad this, he's like, he was an engineer. He was a left brain, logical, smart engineer. Did he believe in precognitive dreams? Nope, not back then. Did he believe in ETs? No, however. You remember the Pascagoula ET? Well, maybe you do, maybe not. Some of you do. There was an ET story in the 60s about some hard-working blue-collar shipyard workers who were abducted. It's one of the most researched stories. My father said, well, maybe you're right, Sue. I know those guys. They don't lie. And he started searching for understanding these things with me. We'd go to the library in Mobile, Alabama, and look up aliens. We'd look up precognitive dreams. We'd look up ESP, because he loved me. And he said, I know you're different, but I'm trying to understand it. So he was my person. So after Paul and Chrissy crossed, I was doing okay. I was a writer. I was writing about health because I believed I could help people avoid illness. But I wasn't really writing about my spiritual truth and what I knew to be true, that we are all part of God and we are not our bodies. I wasn't ready to share that. So my dad suddenly is having back pain. I knew instantly. I knew it. I knew he was dying. So I call my mom and go, I want to come home. I think Dad is dying. She goes, Sue, he's got a back problem. There is nothing wrong with him. We've taken him to the best doctors. So finally I convinced her, I'm just coming home for a week. My mother never liked me, so it wasn't like, oh yes, Sue, come home. It was like, Sue, you forget to take your shoes off at the door and you dirty the floor. Mom, I promise, I will leave my shoes at the door. So I fly home, one look at my dad, and we know. When we are tuned in to souls, we know when they're ready to leave. Don't you? Yeah. And this was the man I loved so much. I didn't want to know that. But I sat down next to him and I said, Mom and everybody had left the room. And I said, Dad, how does it feel to be dying? And he cried and he said, Sue, you're the only person who'll talk to me about it. Because everybody else was telling him nothing was wrong. So I was so blessed to spend the last 2 weeks. Yeah, he was diagnosed the day after I got there with very advanced lung cancer, and it had spread. And so he spent his last 2 weeks of life in the hospital, dying quickly, which I'm very glad about. But I got to spend those times next to him in bed. And he wanted to do a soul review of his life. Now, you all know that when we leave Earth, when we leave our bodies, we do a soul review. We look at the ripple effect of how we've behaved, how we've loved or not loved, and how that has affected everyone around us. And that ripple effect is huge. If I say, you're beautiful, I love you, that sends a ripple of beautiful energy out further than either of us can see. So that's a soul review. So my father sat at the bed with me, telling me all of his stories of growing up and everything he wished he had done differently and everything he thinks he did right. I was so honored to have that conversation with him. So the next day, he slips into a coma, and I knew that he was going to cross, and I wanted to help him. And my family said, Sue, it's your turn to go home and babysit the kids, because I had a 4-year-old daughter, and all my siblings had children, and we were taking turns doing that. And I got to get to this vision. I hope I have enough time here. Yes. So I said, let me stay with Dad and help him. And they said, no, you got to take the kids home. So I get in the car with 5 toddlers, and I'm driving them across town. I get them to grandmother's house. I get them down for naps. I love kids, so actually that part was fine. But then as soon as I got them down for naps, I thought, I need to meditate, because that's the only way I'm going to stop being angry that my family isn't letting me be there with my dad. And I always meditate. So I sat down on the couch, meditating, closing my eyes, and who appears in front of me? My dad. And he's perfectly happy, healthy, and free. And he's goofing around with me the way he did when he was young and healthy. We used to joke and say, Dad, we're going to send you to clown school, because he was such a jokester and silly and goofy. And so here he was in front of me, being a clown, making me laugh. And at first I'm going, Dad, you goofy. And then I was like, oh, Dad, what are you doing here? And I opened my eyes, I picked up the phone, called the hospital room, and my very southern brother, Jim, goes, I go, Jim, I just saw Dad. And he goes, well, Sue, he's having a heart attack here, and they're doing CPR on him. Lung cancer patient. They're doing CPR on him because my family doesn't believe in letting people die, so they had not signed the do not resuscitate orders. But I said, Jim, don't worry. He's not there. And Jim said, the room is chaos. I said, don't worry. He's long gone from that. He just came and made me laugh. So again, a message about laughter and love and suffering is not as real for the soul as it seems through the human viewpoint. So by the time my dad gave me that beautiful gift, there was one more gift he gave me. When he was dying, he had asked me on his deathbed to become Catholic again. I was a meditator. I was living in and out of a Hindu ashram at that point. And he said to me so sweetly, he said, Sue, I know you're spiritual and you meditate, but I know where I'm going when I die, and I want to find you there. Is that the sweetest request? So, of course, I know all paths lead to God. I wasn't going to let him feel that I'm not feeling at peace with it. So I said, yes. And he called the priest in the room. And I did this mini confession. And my dad was so happy. He said, thank you, Sue. I know I'll find you now. So a week after he crossed, my father came to me in that waking twilight state when you're not quite awake and you're able to see the spirit world so clearly. And he said, Sue, it's not like what I thought. You're okay. So that message was, we don't need religion to find God. Thank you, Dad. So right around that time, I finally went, all right, I'm going to have to start really being who I am. And I started I've done numerology since 1980 because it answered questions for me about my soul mission. So I started really offering that instead of giving it away for free and offering it to people to help them. Started writing about it, started doing spiritual counseling, and lo and behold, because I was finally stepping up to my great work, a lot of doors opened that were just miraculous. And I say that to all of you. When you come out of hiding who you are and really use your unique wisdom, your unique gifts, and own it, that you can make your living from that. Give it 100% passion and soul. The universe goes, finally. They're going to wake up and do the work they promised they would do. And magic happens to help you. So, for example, I was going to teach a little workshop on intuition and numerology and career at a local university in Colorado. Very normal stuff I was doing back then. And the director calls me up and says, there's this New York Times reporter who wants to come to your workshop. How do you feel about that? And I was like, well, don't tell me who it is. Tell her she's got to participate in the workshop, or I'll be really nervous and I won't do a good job. So she was in the group, and I didn't know who she was, although I kind of suspected it. And at the end of it, she comes up and goes, this is good stuff. The world needs to know about it. I'm going to write about it in the New York Times. That was 2008, and my clients were booked for 2 years after that. This is what is waiting for you when you do your work from your heart fearlessly. Imagine if we all brought our unique piece, our puzzle piece that holds our gift to the world fearlessly like that. The world would shift instantly into the awareness that we are all God beings. This is a God divine universe. Unconditional love is the fabric of this world. Not misery, not struggle, not drudgery, unconditional love and using our gifts and sharing them with the world. Let's do it this year. How about that? So I want to share this. I'm very grateful I keep getting these wake-up calls. So whenever maybe I start to fall asleep again, something happens. So in 2014, I was teaching a lot of grief shifting workshops where I work with grieving people and help them connect to their departed. And the way we do it is through numerology. We understand our paths, but then we meditate and we have a conversation with our departed, which is much easier than you think. They're right here. And then we write down what we hear them telling us. Imagine being in a room with 50 people who've all lost a loved one, and they are sharing the writing that they just got from their departed child, their departed spouse, their departed parent, and they know it's real because it doesn't sound like them. It sounds like the other person, and they wrote it. They heard it, but first they had to meditate to quiet the mind. That's the only requirement, because the mind will mess with you every time. So we would do that in a group, and to hear those beautiful souls go around sharing that writing with each other, there is nothing greater on earth than that experience, the healing that happens. But on my flight home, I got tired and I got sick. And it was 2014 before COVID, but I swear I got something as bad as COVID. It felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was burning up with like 104 degrees of fever. So on one of those nights, I'm taken out of my body, and this vision is the strongest vision I have ever seen. The whole night, I was held by divine beings. I call them angels because of their energy, their sweetness, their concern for humanity. They held me in space and showed me this view. And they said, "Do you see those beams of light?" And I said, what is that? And they said, every time a soul on earth opens their heart and remembers that they're a part of God, not just a human, that light shoots up from each soul. And as it does, it spreads around the earth. They were showing me how that light was filling in all the dark corners of earth. And this went on all night long. And I was asking them, so what does this mean? What do I do with this? And they said, "Sue, life is hard there, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be harder actually for a little while. And there have to be voices that help people remember that the light is always winning. The light fills in the darkness, and the light comes from the heart. Your only job here is to be one of those lights. Will you do it? I think I have time to show you one other vision. So the angels came through. I have to get to this final one to show it to you. Oop, I messed things up. Oh, didn't show up right. Hold on a second. Well, I can't get the view right. Sorry, guys. Let me try one other thing. But you can see it. Oh, forget it. All right, well, technology and me, we don't get along that great. But I will say, turn that off, please, Jeremy. All right, thanks. But what I'll say is that the angels care about us so much. They are team humanity. Now, I grew up Catholic, and there was a lot of talk about angels when I was growing up, but I was more in touch with Mother Mary, and so I didn't give that much attention to the angels. But at this time in humanity's evolution, I am much more hearing from the angelic realm. And I'm being told things about how humanity can move through this time. And I'm also being shown that some of us our souls originated in the angelic realm. And we came here for one purpose, to be that light, to be the angels of helping service to humanity waking up. So as I'm embracing this knowledge, and of course we know other souls have different origins, such as other galaxies, but as I'm learning about all of this, one day I'm in my office working with clients on Zoom, and an angel appeared in my room. And you got to see that briefly up there. I wish I was better, I could show it to you better. But it was so vivid and so real, and it stayed long enough for me to pull my phone out and take a picture of it. And in that moment, I asked it, I said, "Why are you here? Who are you?" And the answer was, "Sue, I am your angelic realm mother." I didn't really have a mother here on earth. She didn't like me very much. But when that angel said that, I felt that incredible unconditional love that everyone here craves, but we feel like we don't connect to it often enough. That angel poured that love through me and said, not only did she say, "I love you," but this love is enough for the whole universe. All you have to do is trust it. And then, funny thing, the next day I had a medical exam, which had been scheduled for a long time. And I had just recently been diagnosed with a heart defect, a genetic heart defect that I didn't know I had until like 2 years ago. And these doctors got crazy about doing open heart surgery. And so just like Anita Morjani said, like they're scanning me every few months and suddenly putting me in that fear mentality, right? So, and I'm resisting it because I'm pretty healthy. I'm in my 70s, and until you make me climb a mountain again, I'm feeling pretty good. But on that day that the angel appeared, I felt a shift in my body. And the next day, I went to get my scan that was already scheduled. And the doctors were looking at this aneurysm that was 4.7 centimeters, and they were saying, when it's 5 centimeters, we have to go in and fix your valve because it has a defect. I have a bicuspid aortic valve instead of a tricuspid. And I only say that because in my spiritual humor, it means that I didn't really want to stay here or come here, and so I only got 2 aortic valves. And they were handing out 3. I just said, "No, I'll just take 2, please." And so now the doctors have kind of lost their minds about it. So I get that scan, and I go see my cardiologist, and he goes, this isn't right. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it was 4.7, now it's 4.3. Aneurysms don't shrink, especially in your aorta, your ascending aorta." And I'm like, the angel did it. And I'm in the cardiologist's office, and I'm pulling out my phone, showing him the picture of the angel. You can imagine how that went. But do I believe that? Yes. So the doctor goes, "Well, I think that's a mistake, so we need to scan you again." And I said, "Nah, you told me I didn't have to come back for 6 months. So if it's shrinking, why would you ask me to come back next week, right?" So he goes, well, okay. I think I need a new cardiologist. Does anybody know? So anyway, I have an appointment in April, and I am determined, and you all can see it with me, that aneurysm will be so gone that the doctor's going to be going, you're the wrong patient. This isn't your scan. And so thank you. Thank you all so much.
Stay tuned for Ascension expert and best-selling author William Henry.